Moving on, the Israeli government continues to advance its judicial reform plan through parliament, with the coalition succeeding in approving an initial first reading of a law that would make some laws immune from judicial review and limit judicial oversight for others to a unanimous decision by all 15 members of the High Court. Now, while the opposition and street protests continue to rail against such measures, world currency markets are also having their say in the negative. The shekel has dropped sharply against the dollar in recent weeks, and over 2% just in the last day, falling to its lowest level in some 3 years. And this is despite the Bank of Israel raising the key interest rate Monday by 0.5%. It's the 8th straight hike since April. Now, the weakening shekel reflects concerns in Israeli business and financial sectors that judicial reforms will hurt foreign investment in Israel. Well, for more, let's speak with Professor Zvi Eckstein, Dean of the Tiomkin School of Economics at Reichman University, head of the Aaron Institute for Economic Policy at the university, also the former deputy governor of the Bank of Israel. He joins us from Herzliya. And Professor Eckstein, thanks for joining us. Maybe let's just explain briefly how that judicial reform plan is influencing the shekel.
Well, the reforms, it's not a reform, it's a revolution that threaten Israel to become what I would say from a liberal democracy with a very strong judiciary system to a institution. The judiciary system, especially the Supreme Court, would be extremely weak, and there would be full politician control of property rights and other activities in the economy. And that's introduced huge uncertainty, huge economic uncertainty to individuals, to businesses, in particular the high-tech sector, which is fully dependent on investment from foreigners, on global corporations, as well as the venture capital institution, institutional money. And once this uncertainty comes in, individuals living in Israel and abroad, a lot of people who invest in the Israeli shekel, in the bonds or the stock market, take it over and invest in other places. That's the normal market response to uncertainty that has not been foreseen at all few months ago or few weeks ago, or even, I would say, a week ago, when the president of Israel asked the government to think and negotiate with the opposition on an agreeable reform and not a revolution that lead Israel to be sort of a dictatorship.
Right. Now, certainly a weaker shekel is not bad for everybody. It helps Israeli exporters, but it certainly hurts Israeli consumers because imported products rise higher.
More expensive, that's true. But it reflects the general people who invest in the stock market, in the bond market, in the capital market. They're feeling that the Israeli economy is not as strong as they thought a month ago, and that is the threat to the economy, in particular the main export sector, the high-tech sector, which is 55% of the export, may reduce substantially from the reform, from the proposed revolutionary judiciary system change to a less independent judiciary system in a world where all what they do is intellectual property, research and development.
Right.
Research and development is threatened in Israel. That will reduce export. That will push the shekel to be weak.
Right. Now, there's another aspect I want you to comment on this. I want you to comment. Of course, the Bank of Israel raised rates again to deal with inflation this week. Normally, that would strengthen the shekel, but because of, as you mentioned, because of the judicial reforms, it didn't have that impact. Now, those rising rates are impacting on Israelis, for example, who took out mortgages under the much lower rates of the past 15 years.
That's the goal of increasing the interest rate, like in the U.S., like in Europe, everywhere. Inflation rate above 5%. The goal is to go back to between 1 to 3 or 2%. Then you raise the interest rate. In fact, the weakening of the shekel will force the Bank of Israel
Right.
to raise the rate even further.
Well, Professor,
And that would be the right policy given what we
Right.
know about economics policy.
it's the right policy, but Foreign Minister Eli Cohen wasn't so happy. He publicly requested the Finance Minister Bezalel. Let me finish, Prof. Eckstein. He requested the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich he wrote, form a plan against the Bank of Israel governor to stop the rate hikes. That prompted this rebuke from Prime Minister Netanyahu in English in a tweet, quote, under my leadership, the Bank of Israel law that guarantees the independence of the Monetary Committee, headed by the governor in determining the interest rate, was passed. Nothing will change it. Well, that's reassuring, but it's very unusual in a Western democracy.
Not reassuring.
It's not reassuring.
Unfortunately, I was deputy governor when we passed the law. It was under Netanyahu, but that was a different Netanyahu in 2010. Netanyahu now is caring to make a huge reform, which I have no idea why. What's the reason? What's so urgent to do it now? Is to destroy the economy? To destroy the strengths of the Israeli economy that he has built all this year? Explain to us. And what happens is that it's a foreign minister that actually comes out and suggests to threat the independence of the central bank. That Mr. Netanyahu actually did it to Professor Fisher was the governor, and I was deputy governor. And actually, Gaffney, who is the head of the committee that review it, actually, I was there. They completely changed their view about what is a strong economy. And that threatened me, threatened all Israelis, threatened all foreigners who trusted the Israeli economy, because the Israeli economy today is the strongest it has ever been. And the Bank of Israel's stability and the shekel stability has been a very important success there.